Chapter 1. The Stranger by the Lake. The morning mist rolled off Willow Creek Lake, a serene body of water that mirrored the sky so perfectly that it often seemed as though the earth itself had disappeared, leaving only an endless blue void. Ava stood on the dock, her fingers numb as she clutched her grandmother's old journal. The faded leather cover was cracked, and its pages had turned brittle over the years, but it was the only thing that made her feel connected to the past. "To you, my dear Ava," read a note on the first page, written in her grandmother's elegant hand. Ava had always wondered what stories were hidden within those pages, but much of the journal was illegible, damaged, perhaps, by time or by some secret her grandmother had tried to erase. A sudden movement across the lake caught Ava's eye. She squinted through the thinning fog and saw a figure standing at the far edge of the dock. A man, alone, staring at the water. He looked as if he was searching for something just beneath the surface. Ava took a step closer, her curiosity outweighing her caution. He didn't belong here. She knew everyone in Willow Creek, and he was a stranger. Before Ava could decide what to do, the man looked up and met her gaze. He had sharp, deep-set eyes that were almost too intense for the early hour. For a heartbeat, neither of them moved. Then, the stranger turned and walked away, disappearing into the woods that bordered the lake. Ava frowned, the feeling of unease growing within her. There was something about him, something familiar, though she couldn't quite place it. She opened the journal to a random page, her eyes skimming the faded ink. One word stood out, repeating across the page in her grandmother's shaky handwriting. "Ethan. Ethan," Ava whispered aloud, her voice barely carrying in the morning stillness. It was a name that had never been mentioned in her family, not by her mother, nor her father, nor anyone else. Yet here it was, written over and over like a mantra. Who was Ethan? Later that day, Ava found herself back in town, the journal safely tucked in her bag. Willow Creek was a small place with cobblestone streets and cozy cafes, the kind of town where secrets traveled like whispers between neighbors. She walked past the old bookshop where Mrs. Klein was sweeping the front porch, giving Ava a knowing smile. People here always smiled, but Ava often wondered how much they truly knew. As she entered the little cafe on Main Street, Ava saw him again, the stranger from the lake. He was sitting alone at a corner table, a cup of coffee in front of him, his eyes scanning the room as if he were trying to memorize every face. Ava hesitated for a moment, then walked to the counter, hoping to go unnoticed. But of course, he noticed. "Excuse me," a voice called out, soft yet commanding. Ava turned to see the stranger standing just a few feet away. He had approached her without a sound. Up close, Ava could see the shadows under his eyes, the lines that spoke of sleepless nights. "Do you happen to know?" he began, his voice trailing off as his gaze moved to her bag, where the edge of the journal peeked out. He paused, his expression shifting to something unreadable. "Do you know where I could find a place to stay for a while? I'm new here." Ava looked at him for a long moment before responding. "There's an inn just down the street," she said, pointing vaguely in the direction. He nodded, but his eyes lingered on her a moment longer, as if he was expecting her to say something more. "Thanks," he finally said, and without another word he turned and left the cafe. Ava watched him go, her heart pounding inexplicably. She had the oddest feeling that she knew him, though it was impossible. She had never met him before, not in this life anyway. But that name, Ethan, repeated over and over in her grandmother's journal, gnawed at her thoughts. She took a seat by the window, her eyes following him as he walked away. There was something about him, something that called to her, like a half-forgotten memory just out of reach. Ava didn't know it yet, but this stranger would change everything. Her understanding of her family's past, her idea of love, and even her sense of who she truly was. As the door to the cafe swung shut, Ava opened her grandmother's journal once more. This time, she was determined to unlock its secrets, starting with Ethan, the man who seemed to have returned from her grandmother's forgotten pages to stand in flesh and blood before her. End of Chapter 1. This is just the beginning of Whispers of Destiny, a story that will unravel love, mystery, and the secrets of the past. Ethan and Ava's journey will link seemingly small events in the early chapters to major revelations in later ones, creating a complex, heartfelt tapestry of connection. Stay tuned and subscribe to unravel this journey. The 30 chapters will be unraveled in 15 weeks with 2 episodes per week on Friday and Sunday. Stay tuned.